Picture London, 1911. Into the grimy streets of St Pancras is born William Charles Billy Hill, one of 16 children in an hard-up Irish family. His mother, Amelia Spalding, was a poor Irish immigrant, and Billy grew up amid debt and violence. School never had much appeal. Instead, he quickly learned from older cousins and siblings how to survive on the streets. By his early teens, he had his first violent criminal mark on record, his first stabbing, at only 14 years old. London's underworld was nothing new to Billy. He literally grew up in a crime family. In the rough slums of Seven Dials and King's Cross, young Billy learned petty theft, slipping coins from pockets and emptying cash registers, almost as soon as he could walk. By his late teens, he graduated to breaking into empty houses. In the late 1920s, he was already running as an house burglar. These were the bootlegging and shop window cracking days of London in the 1920s, and Billy was deep in it. Through the 1930s, he'll become a fixture among the small-time gangs known collectively as the Heavy Mob. Newspapers later dubbed him the leader of London's Heavy Mob. These gangs specialised in smash and grab heists on department stores, furriers and jewellers. Billy himself took to smashing display windows and grabbing purses and pearls in broad daylight. He was often seen darting through the West End with a loot bag, armed with a revolver for good luck. By the mid-1930s, Billy married his wife, Agnes Kirkwood, but increasingly focused on crime. He was a gangster in training, lurking in Soho clubs, hustling roulette tables and learning the con games that would serve him later. As one post-war account put it, he was sharp, charming and impeccably dressed. A man who could sip tea with aristocrats by day and plan a daring robbery by night. Even in his 20s, he began to stand out from the rowdy thugs. He had a strategist mind. Billy wanted more than petty pickpocketing. He wanted big jobs and big money. Soon enough, his chance come. Prison is just a matter of inconvenience when you're a career criminal like Billy, and he found himself serving at His Majesty's pleasure a few times. When the Second World War broke out, Britain empties its jails to free men for the army. Billy Hill walked free in 1939. The future kingpin recognised the chaos of wartime as an opportunity. He told an interviewer years later, "I must say, I did put my name down to serve until they come to get me. I was making the most out of the situation." So that big, wide, handsome and also profitable black market walked into her ever open arms. In short, Billy turned war into profit. During the Blitz and rationing years, he ran a mini empire of black market goods. He bought and smuggled petrol, food, whiskey, sausages, anything scarce, and then sold it for vast profits. One journalist called him the dapper gangster from Seven Dials. He emerged from the war as a leading figure in the capital's underworld. In 1940 alone, he staged a series of armed robberies in the West End. For example, he led a raid on Carrington's jeweller's shop in Regent Street, smashing through the shop front with a carjack and grabbing £6,000 worth of gems. He also made forged ID papers for deserters and ran protection rackets. Clothing shops and nightclubs in Soho and Mayfair paid him for security to avoid break-ins and beatings. And Billy even partnered with established crooks like Jack Spot. Their relationship was still informal then. They'd get to know each other better. Despite his successes, Hill's wartime crime spree was punctuated by jail time. After the war, in the late 1940s, he was caught in a major warehouse burglary. He fled to South Africa to escape justice, but authorities caught up with him, extradited him back to London. Hill was convicted for that robbery and served a prison sentence. By the time he got out in the early 50s, he was already quite a wealthy man. He'd made quite a bit on illegal trades and heists. He'd seen London police stretched thin by war, learned to exploit black markets, and even advised others how to wield a knife. He was now ready for the big leagues. And by 1952, Hill was ready to stage his most audacious caper yet, the East Castle Street postal van robbery. In broad daylight, Hill's gang stopped a post office van and made off with it all that would be worth over £7 million a day. No one was ever convicted, and the crime remained an unsolved legend, later called a blueprint for the Great Train Robbery. Hill himself hinted in his memoir that he'd organised it. This stunning score gave Billy a war chest of cash and proved he could mastermind military precision crimes. It also caught the attention of London's old guard, including Jack Spot, the city's reigning gangster boss. By 1954, Billy Hill had a reputation. At the same time, Jack Comer, better known as Jack Spot, was at the top of the London underworld. Spot, a Jewish criminal born Jacob Colmore, had risen through the gangs at the East End, and by the 1950s he ruled London, running racecourse bets, illegal gambling clubs, otherwise known as spielers, and protection rackets across both the East and West Ends. He was a legend on the streets, known for muscle and ambition. The two first crossed paths during the war through East End rackets, but their formal partnership began after Hill's last prison term. While still locked up for the warehouse robbery, Billy Hill wrote a bold letter to Jack Spot asking for work. Spot apparently admired the moxie of this young thug. When Hill was released from prison, Spot had him picked up in a car and personally took Billy to Savile Row, had a tailor fit him with a sharpshoot, and then introduced him to his inner circle. In Spot's eyes, he was a talented and smart thief, someone with brains as well as bravado. To Spot, Hill offered fresh energy and cunning. To Hill, Spot offered the fast track into big time crime. Remember that at this point, Spot's racket sprawled across London's West End clubs and East End streets. Spot had survived gang wars and even eliminated rivals like the White family at the racetrack, which was stuff a legend. Now he's in his 40s and his empire was hungry for strong lieutenants. Billy fit the bill. Over the first few months of 1955, Spot put Hill to work, running several of his gambling clubs, giving Hill the keys to some of London's best known spelunkers. In Spot's words, he took a shine to Billy's talents. This was no temporary job. For the first time, Billy Hill had a legitimate front and a cut of the action. Spot trusted him with real power. He was out collecting protection money from West End nightclubs, overseeing illegal betting rings, and handling payrolls via enforcers. Hill even continued running a few black market lines on the side. He had correct connections all the way out to Morocco, smuggling gold and petrol for extra profit. Working for Spot gave Hill both cash and cover. He showed off the Savile Row suit by day and then he strutted around in Soho nightclubs at night as one of the bosses.
Jack Spot's era was beginning to wane by 1956 and Hill sensed it. He was young, ruthless and smarter than many expected. Spot not only tolerated Hill's rise, he encouraged it. Hill helped Spot expand his foothold into the West End's lucrative casino scene and even invested in racecourse gambling sweeps. Together, they effectively conquered large swathes of London's rackets by the mid-50s, each doing what he did best. As one historian puts it, their coalition conquered the lucrative West End. Jack Spot brought the muscle and tradition, Billy brought the new generation planning and bold heists. Within just a couple of years, Hill's influence had grown so much that stories swirled about Spot's rising star himself. Yet on the surface, the partnership was still strong. Spot publicly praised Hill's abilities. Reggie Cray later recalled that as a young gangster, he wanted to emulate most of all Billy Hill, for being both physically tough and quick thinking. In Spot's eyes, Hill was the prototypical gentleman gangster, the mentor he'd been looking for. Under Spot's wing, Billy Hill moved like a shadow king across London. He was now co-running the empire he'd only dreamed of in his younger years. Hill and Spot's crews worked every angle, fixed fights, ran bookies on racecourses, shook down strip clubs and peep shows, and stood guard over dozens of speakeasies and gambling dens. Together, they run the kind of sophisticated rackets one only heard about, paying off crook cops and judges to let them alone. Spot formally handed Billy managerial control of several major gambling clubs, the so-called spielers, and let Hill pocket much of the take. If a nightclub in Soho needed protection, it was usually Hill's men that collected the fee. In this era, in the mid-50s, Hill's image became polished. He frequented private poker games at Aspinall's and mingled with wealthy high rollers. Working together, Spot and Hill made a potent team. Spot continued to run the old school enforcement, muscle, intimidation, street level control, while Hill handled planning and finance. Hill was the type who kept spreadsheets on rackets and calculated police movements. Spot was the type who solved disputes with blackjack. This dynamic made them a powerhouse. They even started to mentor younger criminals. Before long, the Cray twins, Reggie and Ronnie fell under Hill's tutelage, learning the art of the con from him. By the middle of 1956, Billy's star was ascending. He'd been released from prison poorer and far less powerful, but now he was rich, well dressed, and on the path to taking over London's underworld. The newspapers still focused on Jack Spot as king of the underworld, but behind the scenes things were starting to shift. Some in the gang world whispered that Hill was being groomed as Spot's heir. Others said the younger gangster had designs of his own. In any case, Spot seemed to trust him, until it all unravelled. Join me again next time on London's Dark Archives to see how this tale comes to a conclusion when the partnership turns sour in the final and the third part. See you then.